So today we'll be looking at my track Lights that just dropped last week with Louisa Laus, and in particular the drums and the techniques that I used in order to keep them simple but interesting. There are obviously a million different ways to program your drums. This is just how I do it right now. I mean, it could change. So first I wanted to talk about the kick. So this kick that I used is resampled Kaytranada kick, and it's right on the beat. It's a 4 on the floor type pattern, but I made sure to add extra little accents that are repeating but different. So the first technique is using these little kicks right next to each other, but actually modulating the volume of one of them. And then I did the same thing, but with a kick at the same volume. So in this particular track, I wanted a bit of human feel, but I also wanted it to sound choppy. So what I did was start with this drum break. Starting with a drum loop or a drum break on top of your kick is a good way to drop some inspiration. So now editing the pitch as well as using the different warp modes in Ableton allow you to create interesting patterns as well as differentiate yourself. So by using beat warping where it preserves the transients, sometimes Ableton marks different points in the sample as a transient when it may not necessarily be obvious. So by making it choppier based on those transients, you can come up with different interesting rhythms. So let's listen to the kick and the drum break together. So now that we have our basic rhythm going, we can use different elements to add to that. So particularly, I like using hi-hats, especially ones that sound a little more organic. So since we have the kick that's very consistent and rhythmic, we can be a little more interesting with our percussion. And so I didn't want the pattern to just be 8th notes or 16th notes. So here you can see the hi-hats that I used have an interesting tone. I also used beat warping with the transients to make them a little shorter. And as usual, you can see that I delay my hi-hats. So here I used a shaker just as an accent, create some variety, as well as supporting the percussion with a different type of sound. Since this track would have vocals on it, I made sure to clear a little bit of the high end from a lot of percussion, just to make some more space for the vocals. I used a sample from Arcade that sits under the beat, but by putting it in an interesting point rhythmically, I can afford to have this repeating throughout the whole song without it getting repetitive. So here I added a few fills, and going with the theme of the other percussion, I used beat warping and made it choppier. So let's see what we have all together. So in the second part of the chorus, I add a shaker to bring more variety into the track. So here I EQ'd it to get rid of some high end, as well as added a sidechain. So with so many elements of percussion together, but you still want to keep it simple, it's important to leave little breaks. And these breaks can actually act as something interesting for the listener. So here I knew I wanted a very wide clap, so I used 3 different samples, as well as some stereo imaging on some of the samples. So you can see that the sample is actually arriving before the beat, as well as a delay on each individual sample to make the clap thicker. And an easy way to keep things interesting is when you're going into a second chorus or into a verse, what you can do is create gaps of space where people expect something but you put nothing, and then lead them into the track. In particular, getting rid of the kick as well as bringing it back in an interesting pattern is how you can achieve this effect. So let's listen to what it sounds like in the track. So that's it for today. You can check out the track in my description, or you can catch it on Fresh Finds, Metropolis, and a few other Spotify playlists.
You don't need to react, it's a matter of fact. We should stay on track, the world ain't ours, yes, so we should take a step back, oh yeah. You know me, singing all my thoughts in the song for free. You know me. Don't stay